Aaron.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where we realize that moving to a small town in the middle of nowhere is a bad idea because this week we watched Squaring the Circle.
Written by Jeremy Burnham and Trevor Ray.
Directed by Peter Graham Scott.
And aired on February 14th, 1977.
We're rapidly approaching the conclusion of the Children of the Stones saga with episode 7. And where the Star Wars saga should have been.
Things are... No, I mean, you know...
Just had to get that joke in there because I also watched episode 7 of that, like right before watching episode 6 of this.
Well, so. as much as there's parts I don't like about The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, like just ending it at Force Awakens would probably be even worse.
You didn't want to end it on that aerial shot of Rey holding a lightsaber out towards Luke?
Nah. I don't dislike Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, by the way.
Yeah, I just think I like both of them.
Yeah, I just think they're in the lower half of the main 9 Star Wars movies.
Well, that's a story for when we cover those 3 on Triple Play.
Rogue One is the worst, the absolute worst Star Wars movie, worse than the holiday special.
Wow! Strongly disagree. Strongly disagree with every fiber of my body. Well, let's go back to Children of the Stones. So before we start, squaring the circle is an actual thing. And I just wanted to bring it up briefly here because I was extremely interested to see if this episode would have anything to do with the real concept of squaring the circle. And it doesn't. At all.
Okay.
So squaring the circle is, if you do geometry, there's you can construct circles and lines using just a compass and a straight edge, right? Not a ruler, because then you know how long it is, just a straight edge and a compass. And you could use that to build, you could bisect a line, or you could build a circle, Anyway, so squaring the circle refers to this idea that you can use just a compass and a straight edge to take a circle and then construct somehow a square with the, I believe, same area. It's been pretty much agreed upon to be impossible or close to using just a compass and a straight edge. So it's something that's been it's been a concept since very early on mathematically.
Yeah. Maybe this episode was going more for not that concept, but this is the episode where they kind of find out or very heavily hint that this is a time loop.
But why would that be a square then?
It's again the circle, the events of the Milbury Circle are being repeated. So it's like they're being, squared or whatever.
I guess.
4 squared.
Yeah, doubled almost, but not.
Yeah.
Well, on that
just
topic,
sounds catchier than doubling the circle.
I don't know about that actually. I might have agreed with you if we hadn't just said out loud doubling the circle, but hearing it out loud, actually, I don't know if I agree with you.
Circling back, that's what they should have called it.
That's what they should call episode 7. But instead, I think episode 7 is
Full Circle.
Full Circle.
Yeah, like the Doctor Who story that introduced Adric, the greatest of all companions.
And therefore, by default, Full Circle is the greatest Doctor Who story of all time.
Right.
That's the one that introduced Adric as a really arrogant mathematics genius.
Oh yeah, I forgot that Adric was a mathematics genius. Just like how I always forget that Perry was a botanist and Mel was a programmer.
But at least they used Adric's mathematics genius because the monster kidnaps him in Castrovalva and uses his mathematics genius to maintain Castrovalva as a pocket universe or whatever nonsense was going on.
And it was incorporated into his death. He himself never found out whether or not he was right.
Yeah, his hubris was his undoing in the end. Rightfully so, little shit.
Wow.
Don't act like you're part of this revisionist camp all of a sudden, where you're like, Adric was great.
No, he was terrible.
You bashed Adric just as much as me, if not more.
Yeah, he was terrible.
So on the topic of time circles, we get a little recap at the beginning here, and I realized, how do they know?
Oh God! The recaps that we've been getting have all been part of this, man. We're part of a loop. We can't escape. The events of the past are just repeating themselves
through the recaps. Well, I was gonna say, Hendrik looks at the digital clock and he's like, "It's time!" And then he opens up the ceiling and the beam of light comes down. This obviously happened last episode, and this is when I remembered. How did they know that it was time to open the ceiling for the beam of light before digital clocks were invented?
Just a good guess, maybe. Well, maybe it has something to do with like why this is all related to like ancient stone circles and Stonehenges and stuff, is because like those were ancient ways of like keeping track of the universe and the stars and time and stuff.
Oh yeah, maybe. Because I was just thinking, like, did they just like, well, it's time now, and then open the roof, and then like nothing happens, and like the people like,
Yeah, I don't know. But what we do find out is that Sandra and Margaret get turned into happy people.
Oh no.
And we find out that it was Hendrik all along.
To no one's surprise. Like
I trusted you,
two
Hendrik.
episodes ago, it was pretty much they come out and say Hendrik is the one.
Well, Margaret actually visits Adam after this.
Yeah, because Adam and Margaret had this plan for them to come over to Adam's place for a nightcap, they call it, after going
which
to
is
Hendrik's.
like a recap, but it takes place at night.
Is that where that word comes from? I always wondered, actually.
I don't know. I don't even know what nightcap is. Never heard of it before until now.
Oh, it's like a you go over to your friend / lover's place and have a drink at night.
Well,
an alcoholic drink, usually.
They don't end up doing that because Margaret lies about going to Hendrik's house or not going to Hendrik's house. She says that Sandra wasn't feeling well, so they ended up not going.
Yeah, Adam, you need to get out of this relationship. Your partner's lying to you about going to Hendrik's place.
And Matthew, is like, well, guess I was just wrong about everything. Because Matthew was using his psychometric abilities to spy on Sandra and Margaret and Hendrik.
Right.
So they take Adam and Matthew actually made a recording of what Matthew was saying as he did that, and when Adam plays it back for Margaret, she she does faint.
And then when she gets back up, they ask if she's okay, and she's like, "I'm perfectly happy." And it's like, "Oh shit!"
And this was actually funny. We immediately cut to a scene where Adam's like, "So, packed your things yet, Matt?" They just decide to GTFO while they still can. Good move.
It reminds me of the woman who fell to Earth when the doctor's like, "If you stick with me, you'll get answers." And the one guy's just like, "I don't want answers. Bye." And she's like, "I'm out. I gotta go to work. I never want to see you again."
Check out Trust Your Doctor, Doctor Who podcast.
Our longest running podcast. And
podcast.
I think currently one of the longest still running Doctor Who podcasts.
Probably. Crinoid just celebrated their 10th anniversary. So, I think
Crinoid, Radio Free Scaro are both above us, as well as Verity.
Radio Free Scaro started in like 2005 or 6, or when podcasts were just starting to become a
youth.
thing.
Yeah, Verity is also above us.
Yeah. Speaking of Crinoid podcast, we have a little announcement to make probably at the end of this episode. I would assume at the end of this episode. Otherwise...
You're just teasing everyone in the middle of the episode. When have we ever done this? Every time we do this, we just mention it the first time we remember it, and now we're teasing them out.
Yeah.
So, Matt decides to sneak out and go see Sandra because, one, he wants to give her the scarf back, but also, two, he wants his painting back. The painting that convinced the government to send Adam and Matt out here.
Yeah. This is the first of many times that Matthew almost / eventually does sabotage this plan to leave. He's like, come on, just leave the painting. Like, who cares? The whole reason you're doing this is so you never have to think about Millbury ever again and the horrific events you've witnessed there.
No, must have the painting.
So he goes to the church and he sees Hendrik exit the church, despite the fact that the church was supposed to be locked and just sort of locked up with nobody going in or out.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't suspicious in and of itself. Maybe Hendrik is watching over the grounds or, keeping it maintained.
Well, that could be
Matt jumps to some pretty big conclusions.
Well, I think the vision he witnessed is all a part of that. Maybe if he didn't see Hendrik turning people into brainwashed zombies, then he might have just written this off.
This could be a perfectly reasonable explanation. Maybe it's just a party game, Maybe it's just charades.
Maybe it's just the repetition of an ancient ceremony from the distant past playing itself out again in modern times, Perfectly innocent.
Nah, definitely charades.
Anyway, Sandra appears, and she and Hendrik are like best friends now.
Yeah.
So Matthew sort of jumps out from behind the grave he's hiding behind. And he gives Sandra back the scarf, and she's like, "Oh, just give it back to me at school. You'll be there in a few minutes, won't you?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm actually bailing while I still have the I'm going to be helping my dad, so I'm skipping class today."
Yeah. And then, because that's why he's like, "Yeah, can I have the painting back, like, right now?" And she's like, "No, just come off to school and get it." And he's like, "Ah." But then, I guess Margaret just brings it over to Adam and is like, I think your son would want this painting before you leave. And Adam's like, where is Matt?
Well, that's when we find out that the people in town seem to know that they're leaving, even though they've only apparently told Crabtree.
Yeah, they've all got some sort of psychic link going on here.
Right, and telling Crabtree was probably their first mistake.
Yeah. Well, they wanted breakfast before they go. And I think Hendrik later says, like, yes, bacon... What is it? Bacon, eggs, and avocado.
And tomato.
Yeah, tomato. That's right.
Tomato.
What a nutritious breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, maybe not when you do things the British style of, like, just charring everything to a crisp and having the eggs be, like, completely burned on the outside and raw on the inside.
Well, I'm just curious to know that if you've acquired your lime gel, your mint jelly for our live taste test.
I'm not prepared. So what are the ingredients again? Mayo, ham,
mint jelly, ham,
and apple crumble.
So,
yeah, the thing about this is I don't eat really any of those foods. So if I buy these things to do the taste test, I'm just gonna have like a jar of mayo and like a pack of ham that I'm just not gonna do anything with beyond the initial test. Yeah, so still a little undecided as to whether this is actually all gonna go down next week.
It is going down.
Oh, well, guess that's that then. But Matthew decides to sneak into the church because he's extremely suspicious at this point, and he finds a little like, medieval style emergency exit, let's call it. And he kicks in the probably rotting wooden little door and slides down into the church.
And for some reason, Hendrik constructed the computer control panel to be on the floor, requiring you to either kneel or lie down on the floor to operate.
Well, Hendrik, first of all, I mean, let's just get this straight, has created like a little evil villain lair in the church. He has these giant whirring computers and, ominous control panels installed.
Right.
And Matthew was like, what the hell is all of this? And Hendrik walks in and he's like, snooping as usual, I see. To reference that meme that lived at the time of the dinosaurs.
One of my friends referenced Big Chungus yesterday, and I forgot that meme even existed.
Yeah. Yeah, who could forget Big Chungus? The greatest of all 2017 memes.
Wasn't it 2018?
Well, whatever.
And Ugandan Knuckles.
Speaking of Star Wars, as we were at the beginning of last episode, I don't know if I said this on this podcast or on our Doctor Who podcast, but, despite the fact that...
Wait, where's this going?
People say that Disney, buying Lucasfilm and taking over Star Wars was a mistake, but, they gave us Rey-Hu, the last great meme of the 2010s.
Yeah, you said this on Trust Your Doctor.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it again here, just to reiterate, just to make it all clear. Rey-Hu was the last great meme of the 2010s, and for that, it was all worth it.
My favorite is Rey-Hu, Raid Shadow Legends.
Rey-Hu never revealed the thing that Poe had to say.
Finn, you mean?
Yeah, Finn, my bad.
Well, so Hendrik comes in, he's like, you know what this is, right? This is a computer to compute the eclipse, or the supernova, or whatever he says.
This is a computer that's helped me keep up in the field of astronomy after I quit the field of astronomy.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
He made a big deal about how he quit in one of the earlier episodes.
Turns out it was all just a ruse.
Right. Well, he says he decided to come and study the circle, which I guess wasn't totally, a lie.
This is one of those Obi-Wan, from a certain point of view, I wasn't lying to you, Luke. And Luke just gives him this, all right, old man, all right, face.
The moment Luke seriously considers turning to the dark side.
So Hendrik then comes over to their house and is like, why are you guys leaving? And then Matt, or Adam actually basically just lays out that they know everything that's going on, that Hendrik thinks he's like a high priest of some sort of crazy religion, that he's got to brainwash people to follow him. And Hendrik's like, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about any of this. And they're like, we're on to you, Hendrik. We're on to you, so we're leaving.
Yeah, this is actually done pretty well, I think. It really paints both Adam and Matt in this, I think, positive light for them, as people in this fictional universe. They figure out, like, they don't have to be sat down and, like, have the cult and the brainwashing explained to them. They figure it all out, and as the viewer, that's somewhat refreshing. Is that, like, as the viewer, you yourself have figured all of this out, and then, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but, like, gradually, and this is the turning point of it, Adam and Matt have also figured out what's going on. But Matthew, it seems that Matthew is just hell-bent on sabotaging their plans to just leave under the radar, because he just, like, gets up and confronts Hendrik here.
Adam's just like, Matt.
They tell Hendrik that they won't be part of his plan, like you said, to brainwash everyone. And there's a little interesting exchange here where Hendrik says something along the lines of, like, people in this town are just sheep and they need, like, a leader to, in more or less words, he doesn't actually say this, but, like, lead them to the slaughter. And I think either Matthew or Adam responds with, like, something to do with free will. I wish I wrote down.
I wrote it down.
Okay.
Hendrik says he was just unleashing their inner happiness, and Adam says there can be no happiness without free will. And then Hendrik says that the people of the town needed someone to show them the way, basically.
Right. And then Adam says something along the lines of, like, so you blindfolded them and led them down this path or whatever. Mm-hmm. Which Hendrik, throughout all of this, seems as if he wants, whether this is just like a ploy or not, it seems as if he wants Adam to join him on this crusade to control the people of Milbury.
Join me, young Skywalker.
But they don't. They leave, or they try to.
Yeah, so they're driving down the road, and then flashback to episode 1 when Crabtree just stands in the middle of the road, and they think they've crashed into, like, a rock, because we see some sort of crash sequence, and we see them wake up, and Adam's like, I think we crashed into a rock, and Matt's like, no, it was a lady, and then Adam's like, was it Mrs. Crabtree? Matt's like, I don't know why I related that entire exchange.
Well, I remember back when we watched episode 1, I said, as far as I remembered, Crabtree being in the middle of the road was not related to the supernatural occurrences that were about to go down, but I was wrong.
You were wrong.
Yeah,
you were wrong.
This is the episode that I remember least from from my initial watch of the show. I remember the next episode fairly well, but this one I had almost no memory of.
Well, Adam says a line that like clearly indicates that they've not just figured out this whole like cult thing. They've figured out that this is like a time loop, well ahead of me as an audience member figuring out that it's a time loop, because he goes, "We failed to get through to our present." And I'm like, what?
Right, because they're actually, when they wake up, they're in Hendrik's house. Mm-hmm. And Hendrik comes in and kind of explains the situation. He says that Link found them just passed out in their car and brought them back. And either Matthew or Adam says, like, that can't be. We crashed. We were part of it. We witnessed the crash. And Hendrik goes like, so what's that? And he motions out the window, and they go and look, and the car is totally fine. Mm-hmm. And so Hendrik tells them that dinner will be in 55 minutes, and we get a shot of the atomic clock again. And this is when Adam says that, you know, they're in a time that's running parallel to their own, and they need to get out.
Right. The 55 minutes thing is interesting because there are 53 people in the town, plus then Matt and Adam, which makes 55 people in the town.
Right.
So 1 minute for every person in the town. But then Adam's like, yeah, we can easily escape. And then Matt's like, but what about that? Out the window. And just like all the townspeople are just surrounding the town in some sort of weird like cult.
Right. Surrounding Hendrik's house at least.
And then that's how the episode ends.
Yep. With them trapped in Hendrik's house.
Oh God, they're making a circle. How terrifying. Oh no.
Well, the implication of all this is like if they try and leave this human barrier, they're going to get like killed or something. Or turned to stone, or converted.
Or turned into happy ones.
Right. Which seems like is their inevitable fate either way. Because they're about to go to dinner. They're about to go to dinner with Hendrik.
They're about to go to Dindrik.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I mean, when I first watched this show, I think had that same reaction of like, wait, this is a time loop? Like, I mean, even though it's like on the second watch, it's so heavily telegraphed. There's the thing with playing out the events of the barber surgeon, the bit where they heavily telegraph that Matthew and Adam are the analogs for the people from the painting. In this episode, Adam constantly calls Hendrik a magus or a high priest, indicating that he's also perhaps part of this time loop and not necessarily the one perpetuating it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's ever, as far as my memory of episode 7, I don't think it's ever actually explained whether Hendrik is causing the time loop or whether he's just sort of a pawn in it as well.
Personally, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah. I mean, he's the one sort of, he's perpetuating it in the sense that he's like the analog for the ancient priest who was perpetuating it. Sorry if that was a spoiler. But
no, it's kind of what I figured was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like so heavily telegraphed in this episode.
But I don't know if that's like him consciously doing that or if he was taken in by the circle himself. I don't remember.
The circle seduced him with the ways of the time loop. Yeah, I think I talked about actually everything I wanted to talk about plot-wise for this episode.
Yeah, you know, I didn't actually have much for this one. I didn't really even have any quotes or behind-the-scenes stuff or any weird 70s costumes.
I had one weird 70s costume. Well, you mentioned all of Matt's continually ill-fitting clothes on Twitter.
Yeah.
Mine was Hendrik comes in wearing like an olive green tailored suit.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? One, where would you even buy that? Two, who would wear that except someone in the 70s? So, and he has like, it's an olive green suit with like a rust colored tie. Very fetching, but very unorthodox color scheme. This is when he confronts Matt in the basement of his evil lair in the church. So,
yeah, interesting color choice there, I guess.
Very interesting. Just going to reiterate that this episode has nothing to do with squaring the circle. Just saying.
Maybe the townsfolk are actually forming
a square around
you,
Hendrik.
We do what we want.
Screw you, Hendrik. We want sides to our shape.
What if that's how they break the time loop? Is they they rearrange the stones into a square, and that ends it.
I would watch that.
You just see at the end a Troll 3-esque scene where like bulldozers drive up to Milbury, excavate the stones, and place them back into a square.
That's still one of the greatest endings to any movie I've ever seen. Not only because it's just so hilarious watching bulldozers come over the mountain, but because the whole movie all of a sudden turns into this anti-environmentalist message, where the message of the movie is like, industrialize as much as possible and bulldoze forests.
Yeah. So the movie, alternately called Troll 3 and Contamination Point 7, also like The Crawlers, I think.
Yeah, The Crawlers.
Is about these sentient vines that are destroying a town and killing people because they're destroying the forests to build a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, so you think the message is going to be like, oh, if we learn to work together with our environment, like, we can be better. But so then the final scene is they go to the forest and they're like, they're trying to kill the vines by hand, and they're losing miserably. But then there's just this like shot. Imagine like Flight of the Valkyrie playing.
Our intro.
Yeah, imagine that playing. And then it's just bulldozers, like, coming over the crest of a hill. And then one of the main characters goes like, woohoo!
We've been saved!
And they just bulldoze all the vines. And they win. We talked about this more on Triple Play.
Movie Trilogy Podcast.
Go check that out. We'll link the episode in the show notes if you want to go there directly.
But yeah, I think that's all I had for this week. You know, personally, I hope Adam and Matt can
die.
No, make it out alive.
Me too. Personally, I'm really pulling for them. I'm hoping Die just comes back out of nowhere too, and it's like, hello, it's me, Die. I'm still alive. I didn't die.
But we'll have to see on the next and final episode of Children of the Stones. Which, you know, now is a good time to mention that we'll actually be having a guest next week for the first time in Inevitable history.
Inevitable history. The history of what? Like 3 months?
Yep. We're going to be having Jim of the Crinoid podcast on. We've collaborated with Jim before on Trust Your Doctor.
And Blake's Zenith. He was on Zenith as well. So if you listen to Zenith, you'll remember Jim.
And he's going to be back next week to discuss the final episode of this show with us.
Yeah, talk about episode 7, to talk about the whole show as a whole, and to witness the taste test.
God. The
taste test. Okay, so if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Children of the Stones. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time, again, we're going to be watching Full Circle with Jim. But until then, the end.